saying thanks to the Regina Chamber for inviting me and inviting us today. You'll see a bevy of Cameco people in the crowd today. I want to say to you, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know it's a busy time. We were in last night, and I think there were 3 or 4 or 5 different events going on that people were circling around to. I said, you know, even if you're not invited, just show up at these things and get a free drinks and free, you know, I'm going to try that, I think. I want to acknowledge the presence of a large number of our provincial MLAs that are in here today, and certainly our cabinet ministers that are with us today. Let me just say to you, thank you for the good work you do for this province every day. We appreciate it. I know you don't hear that very often. You usually hear the other side of it, but you step up to do a difficult job, and we appreciate the work you do, so thank you for that. Some of our key community partners are here, and I just want to recognize them. Warren Wagner, Regional Director for Canadian Diabetes, is here. We partner with Warren and his team on the Traveling Diabetes Resource Program in Saskatchewan. It's a great program, and we're proud to be part of it. I see our good friend Jimmy Hobson's over there, Steve Mazur, Kevin Clive is here with the Rough Riders, Gladys Wazlechuk with the Saskatchewan Cancer Agency. That's a partnership we put together about a year ago. We call it our Touchdown for Dreams program, and we try to help women that are battling life-threatening cancers to fulfill a dream. And it's really been a great partnership. We just do a tiny little bit, and we just hope we can make a really small difference or impact. But I can tell you, it's been a very humbling experience, I think, for all of us, and we're really proud to be part of it. Well, I'm indeed delighted to be here in Regina today, the capital of the Fair Province, of course, home to institutions like the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, the provincial government, but also home to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And I have a special attachment to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and it's not because they pulled me over so many times, like some of you might be thinking. My father spent almost 30 years in the force here in Saskatchewan, patrolling the back roads of the province. So Saskatchewan's home for me. I was born in Prince Albert. And as it was with the RCMP back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, you didn't stay long in one place. You moved about every 3 or 4 years. And so we did that. And so after Prince Albert, we moved to a place called Loon Lake, which is up in the northwest. And then we moved down to Morris on the Trans-Canada Highway, and then back up to Meadow Lake, and then down to Swift Current, back to PA, over to North Battleford, to Regina, and then back to Saskatoon, and where we live now. So we've been on that I've Been Everywhere tour here in Saskatchewan. We also, through work, had a 3-year stop in Paris, France along the way. The point I'm trying to make is that I'm certainly very proud to be from Saskatchewan, and I'm very proud to have both the honor and the responsibility of leading what I believe is one of Saskatchewan's greatest corporate success stories, and one that I think all of you in this room should be very proud of as well, and one that I'd like to tell you about today. Now, I know you're on your lunch break, and Minister Boyd told me to keep it moving because people have things to do this afternoon, and so I will do that. I do have a tendency sometimes to ramble on, especially when I'm talking about things that I'm passionate about, things like what might be the riders or the nuclear industry or Cameco, so I often have to be careful and get a signal from somebody. And the length of my speeches was brought home to me recently. I was giving a speech to a large group out in Ontario, and I was going on, and I thought I was giving quite a brilliant speech, but I could see I was starting to lose people. People were on their BlackBerries. You could see heads bobbing, people were yawning, they're looking at their watches, they're tapping to see if the battery had died. So it wasn't going well. I was losing the crowd, so finally I wrapped up. I have to say I left a bit dejected and a bit ticked off. I was ticked off. I flew back to Saskatoon the next day, went down in our office to see my speechwriter who works with me and happens to be here today with me. So of course I go into her office. She says, "Well, how did it go?" I said, "Well, how did it go?" I said, "It was terrible." I said, "What were you thinking, writing a 30-page speech? Nobody wants to sit and listen to someone give a 30-page speech." She said, "I didn't give you a 30-page speech. I gave you a 10-page speech. I just gave you 3 copies." Anyway, I gentlemen, in speaking with you today, I really have three main goals. First, I want to talk about the foundation of Cameco's business, the real reasons why we exist, and those are simple. We exist, Cameco exists, thanks to the world's insatiable appetite for energy. Keep that in your mind, because that's why that's why we exist. So we'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about the important role that nuclear energy has to play in fulfilling that demand for energy. Second, I want to explore the important role that both the province of Saskatchewan and Cameco play in supplying the worldwide nuclear industry with uranium and fuel products. And finally, I'm going to conclude this afternoon with some thoughts about the future of our industry and our company. And I want to leave you, I hope, with some reasons to be very proud of the uranium industry in Saskatchewan that all of you have created. So let me start by taking you back to a date in the past, March 11th, 2011, Friday, about 20 months ago. It's one of those moments in time where I know exactly where I was at and what I was doing. I was in a meeting room in Saskatoon at the Willows Golf Course with a group of our senior leaders, some of them here today. We were talking about strategy and development and leadership and just how we were going to keep up with the momentum that we were seeing in the nuclear industry around the world. Things were moving fast. Nuclear energy was growing quickly in many countries around the world, and we were discussing how we could supply the uranium to these countries that were growing so rapidly. The price of uranium that day was $70 a pound, both on the short-term and the long-term market, and our share price, which rides along with the uranium price to a large extent, was riding high as well. It almost, to us, seemed too good to be true. Then one of our employees there, out of the blue, asked me whether I thought that the 9.3 magnitude earthquake and the 15-meter tsunami that had just washed up on the northern shores of Japan would have any effect on the nuclear industry. Quite frankly, I hadn't heard about that yet, so it was a bit of a surprise, but I think my reaction was quite benign. I said, I don't think so, given Japan's long history, strong participation in the nuclear industry. I didn't think that those events would have much of an effect on the nuclear industry. Well, I can tell you I missed the boat on that one. Here we are still 20 months later, still trying to see our way through the uncertainty resulting from the events that happened in Fukushima that day. And so why do I bring this up? Well, because there are many, and I'm sure there are some in this room, if you watch certain media, that would say that Fukushima was an event that signals the end of nuclear power. Well, I'm here today to tell you the opposite, that that's not the case. That Fukushima or no Fukushima, the long-term future for the nuclear industry continues to grow and looks good, and the demand for our Saskatchewan uranium remains strong. So on what basis, you might ask, can you make this bold prediction about an industry, the future of which seems uncertain? The answer is this. Despite all the negative news we hear day after day, week after week, whether it be about Fukushima, the European recession, Middle East conflict, fiscal cliff, despite all these things, the world's appetite for energy continues to grow. Since 1980, the year I graduated from the North Battleford Comprehensive High School, global electricity consumption has tripled and is forecast to increase by another 70% over the next 2 decades. To put it into a bit of perspective for you, today there are what? 7 billion people on the planet, growing to 9 billion people by 2050. Of those 7 billion on the planet today, there's about 2 billion who have no access to electricity at all. And of those that do, there are many hundreds of millions who have access to only a mere fraction of the electricity that we use on a day-to-day basis in the Western world, and they are demanding more. In many developing countries, this is electricity that would support necessities of life, things like potable water and heat, and all the infrastructure that we here in the Western world would take for granted. In the West, at my house, probably like your house, if you're like me, if you happen to have kids, I bet it's the same. Try to find a plug-in in the kitchen at night to plug in the latest iPod, iPad, netbook, network, escape, net, I don't even know what they are. But I can tell you, every socket in our kitchen is plugged in with them, and that's where we're going. And these things for us now have become our necessities of life. supply. We take for granted the potable water thing and the electricity and the heat. It's these things that are driving the change. So for all of these applications, electricity is needed and lots of it. I can say if you're a country that's concerned with climate change, the importance of clean air, and the need to reduce carbon emissions, you often simply cannot ignore the important role that nuclear energy plays. Nuclear energy offers a safe, clean, reliable, and affordable alternative for baseload power that you simply can't get with wind or solar. Let's take a look at some numbers. Today there are about 431 nuclear reactors operating around the world, and our estimates are for 80 net new reactors by 2021. So net new means they'll build more than 80, but some will close. So 80 net new reactors by 2021. Of those 80 reactors, there are 64 under construction today. This nuclear new build represents growth that we haven't seen since the 1970s, when countries like the United States and Canada and Japan and France and others were building up their nuclear fleets. However, the largest growth today is coming from countries with rapidly expanding economies and populations, countries like India, South Korea, Russia, the Middle East, and of course China. And China is a special case, an interesting case. In China today there are 15 nuclear plants in operation, 26 under construction, and many dozens more planned by 2021, not long from now. And even with this unprecedented level of growth by the end of the decade, nuclear power will represent but a small fraction of that nation's electricity production. And in countries like India and South Korea and Russia and the United Arab Emirates, the move toward nuclear power is similar, as these countries look for both energy security and reliable baseload electricity without the carbon aftertaste. And quite frankly, with those criteria, they don't have a lot of other options. Even here in North America, new plants are being built. The U.S. government recently granted the first license in 30 years for the construction of 2 new plants in Georgia and 2 more in South Carolina, and they are under construction today. And that's to go along with the 104 nuclear power plants that are operating today in the United States and the 20 nuclear power plants, you might not know that, 20 nuclear power plants that are operating in Canada today. As I said, this is a level of growth that we haven't seen since the 1970s. And of course for Cameco and for Saskatchewan, more nuclear power means more uranium is required, and that's good news for our business. Today, global demand for uranium far outstrips what is produced each year. It's been that way in our industry since the mid-1980s. So far, the demand gap has been filled by secondary supplies like inventories, government stockpiles, and dismantled nuclear weapons. But these secondary supplies are finite and diminishing, and as you can see from this chart, there is a looming supply-demand gap in white at the top of the chart that will need to be filled by new production. So that's why places like Saskatchewan and companies like Cameco are so important to the future of the global nuclear industry. Saskatchewan, as we all in this room know, is home to the world's largest high-grade uranium assets, a stable political jurisdiction, an educated and capable workforce, and strong infrastructure, which are all important factors in the decision to invest capital. Yet, we do face significant competition from lower-cost jurisdictions like Kazakhstan and Africa, whose growing populations welcome the foreign capital, the high-paying jobs, and the technology that foreign investors can bring. So we know we have to remain competitive as a province and as a company if we are to continue to compete. For those not as familiar with Cameco, we are a publicly traded nuclear energy company with our head office in Saskatoon. Today, between our employees and long-term contractors, we have over 5,000 people at our operations around the world, the majority of whom are located right here in Saskatchewan. One of the things we're most proud of is that we are Canada's top industrial employer of Aboriginal people. Today we have over 1,700 people of First Nations and Métis ancestry working at our operations. Worldwide, Cameco accounts for some 16% of world uranium production, powering 1 in 18 households in the United States and 1 in 14 here in Canada. As a global company, we have significant growing global mining and milling operations in the US and Kazakhstan, and we also have advanced exploration projects in Australia. We like to invest across the fuel cycle and have fuel processing operations in Ontario. We have an ownership share in Bruce Power. We have next generation technology with GLE laser enrichment, and we have many exploration projects around the world. And we're not done. Over the past year, we spent close to $1 billion on acquisitions here in Saskatchewan and abroad to strengthen and diversify our portfolio of mining projects. However, let me be clear, the backbone of our operation has always been and will remain right here in Saskatchewan. In the last 3 years alone, Cameco has invested more than $1.2 billion in sustaining and growth capital at our Saskatchewan operations, and we expect spending will continue at these high levels for years to come. So if you'll allow me, let me take you on a quick tour of some of our Saskatchewan properties, and I'll start at McArthur River, which is our flagship operation. The average ore grade at McArthur River is about 17%, which is about 100 times the world average grade for a uranium mine. Production from this mine operating today alone totals more than 13% of current world production, which is truly remarkable for a single mine. We take the ore from McArthur River and truck it down the road about 80 kilometers to Key Lake, the Key Lake Mill, which turns it into the yellow cake that we then sell into the market. Between Key Lake and McArthur, we employ just under 1,000 people, about half of whom are from northern Saskatchewan. We have another project in northern Saskatchewan called Rabbit Lake, an operation that's been in production now for over 36 years. In that time, we've mined about 186 million pounds of uranium from this mine. We call it our Energizer Bunny because it just keeps going and going. Rabbit Lake employs a little over 300 people, and again, half are Aboriginals from northern Saskatchewan. Our big new project, the most exciting one for us, is a project called Cigar Lake, which is under development up in northern Saskatchewan, and which I visited last week. The Cigar Lake ore body is the largest undeveloped high-grade deposit in the world, with an average reserve grade of over 18%. So combined with McArthur River, Cigar Lake, Saskatchewan is home to the 2 richest uranium ore bodies on Earth. Cameco and our partners made the decision to develop Cigar Lake in 2004. Over the past 9 years, to the time we start production next year, we will have invested some $2.2 billion to develop this mine. Today, there's about 1,000 people working on site to get Cigar Lake into production. So the good news about all of these Saskatchewan operations is that we continue to grow, and we're growing because we believe in the future of our industry. But we've had some help along the way. In order to be able to sell our products to other countries, there needs to be a bilateral nuclear cooperation agreement between 2 countries. We call that an NCA. The governments of Canada and Saskatchewan have been very active in advancing these agreements with countries like the United Arab Emirates, with China, and with India. These are the states where the most significant growth in the nuclear energy sector is projected to take place. These NCAs help ensure that Canadian companies and workers can benefit from nuclear growth in these countries, while also ensuring that Canada's high standards for nuclear security and non-proliferation, very important, are observed. I can say that we also appreciate the support we receive from the provincial government in other areas, such as through trade missions to countries important to the nuclear industry. And I can say I've had the pleasure of sharing a plate of boiled goat's head with Minister Sheldayoff in Kazakhstan. Minister Boyd has traveled to China, Premier Wall to China and India, and other trips, all in support of not only Saskatchewan's mining industry, but Saskatchewan's economy. And this is important for us, and we appreciate this very much. We've also joint ventured on important infrastructure, such as the recently announced Highway 914 extension in northern Saskatchewan, which will open up the north for new development, uranium and otherwise. We've also worked very closely, very collaboratively on efforts to provide education and training to our current and prospective workforce, which is probably, in my view, the most important area of cooperation that we can undertake. The bottom line is this: the uranium industry is positioned for expansion, and we believe that this alignment aligns very well with Saskatchewan's growth plan, and that should be good news for all of us. So to conclude this afternoon, I thought I'd take advantage of the fact that we are now closing in on the new year, 2013, which also happens to mark the 25th anniversary of the creation of Cameco. And today I'd like to take a moment to highlight just a few of the accomplishments for which we are most proud, and I'd also like to introduce our executive team. When I took on the job of CEO, the best advice I received was from my dad, who said, surround yourself with people a lot smarter and a lot more talented than you. He said, in your case, that shouldn't be a big problem. So I did that. Today, we are very proud of the strong and capable executive team we put in place, all living and working in Saskatoon. And except for one, I didn't have to go very far to find them. Our team is comprised of 5 Saskatchewanites and 1 import, who moved here so long ago we consider them to be homegrown. Several of them are here today. I'm going to introduce them. Dr. Grant Isaac is here. Our Chief Financial Officer is from Regina. His dad, Dale Isaac, you might remember, used to call the Rider games, and he hung out in the press box all the time. Ken Seitz, our Chief Commercial Officer, is from a little bit north of Regina, Edenwold. Did I get that right? A dairy farm in Edenwold? Close. So Ken's got a huge job. He lives in Air Canada. And he's responsible for selling all of our uranium, whether it be to China, India, anywhere around the world, and for all of our M&A activities around the world. So there you go about the dairy farm and talent like we haven't seen. Alice Wong, she's our Chief Commercial Officer, is from lovely Quill Lake, Saskatchewan, where her family ran a restaurant. Gary Chad, our Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary, is from the Chad's Sporting Goods group out of Prince Albert, if you've ever been there to buy anything. And finally, Bob Steen, our import, is our Chief Operating Officer, born in Mapanda, Tanzania, but he's lived in Saskatchewan for the most part of 30 years, so we give him a pass. I just want to say that these are talented people, proud to be from Saskatchewan, working in Saskatchewan, and succeeding in the global business marketplace. And as a team, we're also very conscious of our corporate responsibility to give back to our communities. And while our goal is to create value for our stakeholders, we know that business is about more than that. When I took over in the summer of 2011 as CEO, I and our executive team decided that we would ask our employees to do one thing every day, and that is to try and make a difference. I've always believed that each one of us has the power within us to make a difference, big or small, in the world every day. So we've done that, and in celebration of our upcoming 25th anniversary, we put together a short 3-minute, promise, video that lists 25 ways that Cameco is trying to make a difference around the world. And I'm going to ask Teresa to roll that for us now.
After a quarter-century of growth, we're counting down Cameco's top 25 keys to success.
Why Cameco? We've been a world leader for over 25 years.
Worldwide, energy demand is expected to increase considerably in the next 2 decades. New reactors will require new uranium.
We're increasing output to be prepared for increased demand.
Safety is at the center of all we do, for our people and the public.
With production centers in Canada, the U.S., and Kazakhstan, Cameco is one of the world's largest uranium producers.
We're stable and reliable. great people.
We encourage innovation.
We're involved. We donate more than money. We donate our time.
Cameco's making a difference in our world, our workplace, and our communities. We provide safe, clean, reliable energy around the world, a positive work environment for 5,000 employees, and we give back to important community projects. We've done this for 25 years already, and we can't wait to start on the next 25. Because at Cameco, making a difference isn't just a slogan. It's who we are, and it's what we do. So there you go. I hope you didn't get dizzy backing up the door. So thank you. I hope I've been able to show you a little bit more about our industry and our company this afternoon and convince you that Saskatchewan industry and Saskatchewan people take a backseat to no one and can compete on the global stage. We're certainly very proud to be headquartered here in this province, and with your support, I'm confident that Cameco will continue to be a world leader in providing safe, clean, reliable, and affordable energy to the world for many years to come. So thank you very much for your attention. I want to wish each and every one of you in this season a very Merry Christmas, the best of the holiday season to you and your families, and a Happy New Year to all of you. And thank you again for your attention today. Thank you.
Got a few questions. Some of them are doozies here. Okay. Why can't Cameco build a nuclear uranium waste storage facility in Saskatchewan, and in 20 years with new technology we can resell the spent fuel for more revenue?
So everyone knows that's about the hottest topic around on nuclear waste. And, you know, coming to any kind of a piece like that would require, obviously, the government to be involved, First Nations to be involved. There's a national group that's going around looking at sites. So, you know, we'll let that process play its course. There have been a couple of communities in northern Saskatchewan put up their hand, but, you know, we Cameco are in the uranium mining business, and we'll stick to that business.
Very good. You mentioned 4 nuclear plants under construction in the USA. Any in Canada? Why or why not?
Well, right now there's 20 operating units. We just bought 2 new units at Bruce, not 2 refurbished units at Bruce Power back on. So we're pretty well tapped out there. All of the units that could be operating are operating. There is talk of a new unit at Darlington. They've got environmental approval. It's been through the CNSC for approval. So Ontario is more a case of, do you need the power and when? The economy was, I would say, decimated in Ontario in 2008-9 recession. Demand came off like they've never seen and not expected to come up for a while. So they've said, at least the existing government former premier had said that they wanted to maintain 50% of the power produced in Ontario is nuclear power, 50%. They wanted to keep it at that level. So as they grow, they have options at Darlington, at Bruce to build new plants, and they may just do that.
What do you expect your engineering and technical trades workforce needs will be over the next year or so?
Big. Like everyone else, we're competing. We think that we have a competitive advantage. Others may see it otherwise, but we think we have a competitive advantage. Being in northern Saskatchewan, where there's a large First Nations, Métis population, high unemployment rates, that's where we go first to find people. And so, yes, we have to get them through school, make sure they get their maths and sciences, get them into trades. We spend a lot of money in training, but I can tell you, once you get those employees up to a trained level and in the house, they are fabulous employees. And they won't jump ship for $1 to go to Fort Mac or somewhere else. We work on the weekend, week-out schedule. It works for them in their communities. They can work for us, stay at the site for a week, go back to their home community. If you want to still fish and trap or do whatever you want to get your time off, you can do that. So that works for us. That's how we've been able to get to 50+% Aboriginal employment. Now, that said, we're hurting on the maths, the sciences, the environmental pieces, certainly engineering. I see some of our engineering colleagues are out here, and geology people. We need all of those people to come through, so it'll always be a mix, but we try by moving people up into the supervisory ranks and through training to bring a lot more Aboriginal people onto the site, because we think that's a built-in advantage for our industry.
Just on that topic, you are among the leaders in Canada, and thank you for all the work you do in engaging Aboriginal people in this province. It's outstanding. I think it's a model for many businesses in Saskatchewan. Okay, next question. Two more questions. Which country builds the safest, most economical plant or reactor, and do countries share their technology?
You know, one of the biggest learnings out of the Fukushima incident is that everybody had to go back and look at their fleet and see what kind of units they were running. There was a lot of generation 2 units that they call them. Now there's generation 3 and 3.5, which have a lot more containment, a lot more passive safety systems. And you'll see an industry going forward that was already safe, and I will say it was safe, that's going to be safer in the future, because the organizations like the World Association of Nuclear Operators are getting much more involved and forceful as to what type of reactors can be built, what kind of safety systems have to be put on them. You know, I'm the defender, but we had 3 Mile Island. I was reading an article by Gwen Dyer. 3 Mile Island in the United States in 1979, and he said, "Do you remember the 1 million people that died from that?" And I was thinking, "Sorry." And he said, "Oh no, there were none, 0, none died from that. There was a small release of radiation off. Chernobyl, not so good. Chernobyl was a bad and old Russian technology. Fukushima, we forget that there was about 20,000 people that died from the tsunami and the earthquake, and so far 0 from the nuclear accident. So I don't want to stand up here and defend it, because you'll say, well, that's what you're supposed to say, that's what they pay to say. But I just put that into context and say, even with that, I can tell you all of the companies, whether it be GE, Westinghouse, or the Arevas, or the Cameco folks now, they're adding safety, layers of safety to their operations. The regulators are getting a lot more stringent, and so this will be a safe industry, even safer going forward.
This is a really tough question. Sorry, I have to ask the questions that are written on these cards here, but given the environment's changed dramatically, will the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup?
Well, I can just tell you that the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the best place in the standings that they've been this year.